Welcome to this week's edition of the Weekly Travel Alert. I'm Steve Glenn.
I'm Paul Glenn.
Hey, Paul, this week we're going to share with everybody what they should never, ever do to exchange for foreign currency.
All right.
Because this I've learned the hard way, and even hashtag Snurdly, commonly called Ryan Swihart with us, even Ryan got bit by this bug. And he was telling us a story. But several weeks ago, I went to Italy. And I am literally going through Dulles Airport, and I think, well, I got a few euros in my back pocket, but I need some more. Let me just ask this dude what it would cost to exchange my currency.
Dude in the booth.
Yeah, dude in the currency booth. So I said to him casually, hey, what if I give you $1,000 US, how many euros can I get back? Okay. Now, I had looked before at the currency exchange rate from euros to dollars, not including fees and commissions and all that stuff. And I found out that the rate was 904 euros equal 1,000 US dollars.
So if it was just even with no fees.
With no fees,
okay.
It would be 904. Okay. So guess what this guy tells me? This one made me so mad. He said my $1,000 he would give me 724 euros.
Wow.
Okay, basically, he's charging me $180 for him to give me a currency exchange.
Wow.
Now, that's highway robbery. I'm as mad as hell, not going to take it anymore. Remember that commercial? I just could not believe it. I felt, how can you do that? There ought to be laws against that. And so I thought this whole session we're going to take today and advise people how they can get currency, foreign currency, without getting shellacked by these guys in the currency exchange booth. So I put together a list of things that you should do and take advantage of, what you need to be careful about. But I'm just amazed. This multi-billion-dollar industry of currency conversion is sometimes right out of the Wild West.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing is you get most of the people that, maybe not most, but a lot of travelers, they're not seasoned travelers, so they don't even think about it. They don't know how to figure out the conversion. They don't know how to figure out what the fees entail. So this actually should be very valuable. Like you said, we've all been impacted by it. So if we've been impacted by it, then I guarantee there are a lot of others that have been.
Well, number 2 on the list is I put the best way to do it. Using a bank ATM in your destination is the best and safest way to access foreign currency. So I actually took this to a test. I went to Florence, went to a bank ATM, and I said I want 500 euros. Okay? I checked on the rate. They charge 1.14, and I knew the rate was 1.10. So they were basically charging 4%. Okay? For this transaction. Versus 18%, which I got out of that currency exchange guy. And they charged me a small $3.9 euro commission. And so basically for less than 5%, I can get my euros out of an ATM and compared to what I'm going to end up paying in US dollars. So that's the safest and best way.
Did you use a debit card or did you use a credit card? Because I know the credit card will have some other fees.
Yeah, I used both of them.
Okay.
So when I got back, I could compare the fees. And you're right. Some of the cards, even an American Express card, will charge you a transaction fee for that. Mm-hmm. And even a foreign currency fee for that.
You need to make sure that if you are using your debit card that you've got limits. One, that they know where you're going.
Right.
But 2, you know what your daily limits are. Because that's what I've run into is, and I think I've got a $500 US daily limit. Which then, when you get the fees and conversion and all that type of stuff, that means I can probably pull out roughly 400 and some euros. So you got to also be able to do some of that math so you don't get declined like I did the first time that I tried to do it over there.
Yeah, that's a great point. So Paul's saying, call your bank, tell them where you're going, and when you're going to be there, that takes away all that AI that warns them and says, sorry, you can't use the card. And then also make sure what your limits are.
Yep.
And also, I'm surprised a lot of people forgot their PIN numbers.
Yep.
And so I tell people, before you go to your bank and test your card, getting out money from an ATM.
I actually had to get a card. I had never carried a debit card until we started going to Italy on a regular basis. And so just for this exact reason, I had to go get a debit card. So yeah, it's one of those things that if you're going to be traveling internationally on a regular basis, get that debit card and get some good communications with your bank.
Number 3 on this week's Weekly Traveler. This goes out, the Weekly Traveler, to 100,000 people every Tuesday, Paul, 10:30. And we follow that up every Friday with your program. What's that called?
Travel Week in Review.
That's right, every Friday. They get notified for that. So you can go to executivetravel.com and click on, hey, I want to get these publications, and you'll be on our list. So number 3 on this week's list is warning, not all ATMs are equal. Mm-hmm. Paul, one of the biggest scams is people see a big sign that says ATM, right? And they think, oh, that's a good way. Steve told me to go to a bank ATM and get my money out. Guess what? You can have a pawn shop and have an ATM. Mm-hmm. Okay, it doesn't mean that it's a bank, and they can put any commission they want on those suckers. So if you see one of those sitting beside a bar, okay, guess what? That bar is probably making 20% on you with that commission. So not all ATMs are the same. Make sure it's a bank ATM. Usually you have to go inside the bank. They'll have these cubicles, maybe 6 different rows of them that you can go. That, folks, that's where the locals get their money. So it's going to be the safest and the best conversion rate. So number 4 on this week's Weekly Travel Alert, Paul reads, most European banks will no longer exchange currency for Americans. Used to be 20 years ago, that's where you got your currency exchange. You went into the local bank, the happy teller was there. They would literally, you put your U.S. dollars down, they'd give you your euros, pretty good exchange rates. Mm-hmm. Now I went into a bank in Florence, and the lady says, if you're not an account holder, we won't exchange it. So that's pretty much out the window. But I ended up using their ATM. Okay. So it was a good deal, but don't plan on walking up to the counter and getting any currency exchange. Number 5 on this week's Weekly Travel Alert says, hotels often are able to exchange currency for guests. And I've often gone up, I'm a guest of a hotel. They won't do it for non-guests. I give them my passport. Mm-hmm. That's also required. And I say, hey, I just need 100 euros for taxis, gelato.
I think for smaller amounts,
they're
going to tend to have a couple $100 worth of local currency. Because we did that in Istanbul here this year, and we used to do that a lot in Asia.
Yeah.
So, those hotels will tend to have some of that available.
Yeah. And number 6 on this week's Weekly Travel Alert from Executive Travel, you can go to executivetravel.com, reads, you will need to present your passport to get currency exchange. That's one thing the Americans don't think about. You got to have a passport to check into a hotel, a passport to get currency exchanged at a hotel. You got to do a lot of things with your passport. So I put my cell phone in my left pocket, my passport in my right pocket, and that's how I travel Europe. Yep. I don't know how you keep your passport secured.
Oh, I would tend to do the same. I'll keep the passport on me the whole time.
The next highlight of this week's Weekly Traveler reads, using your credit or debit card is the best way to pay for everything when traveling. So here's the neat thing, Paul. Today, when you travel the world, you can almost pay for everything. I'm thinking of all the things, believe it or not, I buy gelato. They accept credit cards, restaurants, coffee shops, car rentals, gasoline, admission to the hop-on, hop-off bus tours, taxis. And the neat thing is now I started storing all those in my Apple wallet.
Apple Wallet, yep.
And so I just tap, boom, tap, tap, tap. And Europe is really good at taps. And so I think you still need currency. I kind of have currency as my safety valve.
I know when we were over in Istanbul, we were able to pay for the basics, so the meals themselves on a credit card, but the gratuities, which in Turkey they still do expect gratuities. Not all places in Europe have that as an expectation, but the gratuities I had to pay cash. So I think there are some little things. It tends to be the small.
And Turkey's isn't euros, it's Turkish.
Is it the lira?
Lira? Yeah, that sounds right.
So, yeah. And it's a very, very high. I know I was walking around with 30-some thousand lira, which I think was the equivalent of $700 or something crazy. So, but it was a wad of cash that big.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, you need to prepare before you go on your trips. You can oftentimes get currency from local banks.
So your local bank.
Although I found that they're charging
they've started
wacko
increasing
amounts.
that as well. Yeah.
So I'm going to look in what executive travel maybe ought to get in this.
There we go.
To save a lot of money for our customers, because currency exchange, if you don't use an ATM, is literally so expensive, and I almost think it's bank robbery if you use. So if you walk away from today's session, I hope you'll take with you, do not ever, never use a currency exchange booth at an airport or even in a foreign city, because they do the same thing. They pay for their rent with your 20% that they add on top of it. So with that, thanks for joining this week's Weekly Travel Alert. Paul's going to give you the zing, bang, boom of where you need to do next.
Please like, subscribe, share, and add any comments or feedback below on any topics that would be of interest for a future episode. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.